is carrying the flavor of Tulsi offering offered at the lotus feet of Shri Krishna. And as such, the waters of the Gangas are overflowing, spreading the glories of Lord Krishna. Wherever the water of the Gangas are flowing, all will be sanctified both externally and internally.
Correct. So it says here that the waters of the Ganges are always carrying the flavor of Tulsi offered at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Would somebody like to tell me how is that happening? Like, how is she carrying the flavor
because,
of...
Prabhuji, that Gangas actually came from the lotus feet of the Lord.
Yes.
Correct. So,
Tulsa is offered on the lotus feet. That's all.
which Lord was that?
What's that?
Which Lord was that?
Lord
Vishnu.
Yes, correct.
Vishnu.
Correct.
Yeah, what thank you.
So Vamandev, when he expanded himself to penetrate the boundary of the material world, the water from Virija river or causal ocean flew, and that's when the water touched the Tulsi on the lotus foot of the Lord, I should say, and she's carrying that flavor, and that is what gives Ganga or Ganges the power to purify all the sinners. Excuse me. And anyway, so it says here, the last line says, wherever the waters of the Ganges are flowing, all will be sanctified, both externally and internally, simply because she started by touching the lotus feet of the Lord. And over there, it's called Mandakini, by the way. Ganga has many, many names. So where in the heavenly planets, it's known as Mandakini, and in the Patal Lok, it's called Bhogavati. Okay. And you may recall the text number 6 from Nectar's instruction. Let me see if I can remember. Excuse me. Drashtva Swabhav Janitar Vapuscha Dosha Na Prakritatvam Hi Bhakta Janas Pashe Ganghavasam Na Khalu Budbud Phen Pankar Brahma Drivatvam Apgachati Nirdharma. So it says that we should not look at any material or physical defects on the body of a pure Vaishnava, just like we don't see the contamination of the rainwater in the Ganges, because it's always pure, and anything that falls in the river also becomes pure. So the idea was that the Ganges is very, very pure, and therefore, if we want to purify ourselves from any sinful reactions, we can bathe in the river Ganges. Now, what is even more effective in getting rid of our sinful reactions? And I'm not talking about chanting of the holy name. So what is even more effective?
Is it the dust of the lotus feet of pure Vaishnavas?
Yes. So even the darshane pavitra karo sahi tumhar. Even the darshan of a pure devotee, and of course dust from the lotus feet, is more purifying than even the Ganges, because Ganges you have to touch, take bath in it, and maybe more than once. But simply seeing a pure devotee gets rid of our sinful reactions. Okay, so this came in the context of living in the Dham, and so that's the one. Okay, let's move to the next page. This is now accepting only what is necessary. And actually, so I'm going to skip this paragraph, but I'm going to talk about a little bit. So here it does say in the Nardiya Puran, which Khatwanga Prabhu was asking. So in the Nardiya Puran, there's indication that a devotee should accept only what is necessary for physical maintenance. And you may recall the verse from Nectar of Devotion earlier, I think chapter 2 or chapter 1, where you talk about anasaktasya vishyan yatharaham upajinjata. Definition of yukta vairagya: take only as much material things as necessary, not more. That is the yukta vairagya. And although it also means that if we have to make some adjustments in the details of what we do, long time ago we talked about principle and detail. So the details of what we have to do, then we should be able to do it. And the example given is that if we go to a rich man's house, it's okay if we wear a suit and pants. You don't have to go in dhoti. You don't have to go in dhoti and kurta. You don't have to go in, not so clean clothes, because when we go to a rich man's house, we want to be respected. And let's face it, the natural tendency of a conditioned soul is to judge people by their clothes, not by who they are. So why cause that problem for us? Go ahead and dress properly. Srila Bhaktisar Saraswati Maharaj, he put on coat and hat and all that. Srila Prabhupada did, and I know Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Japtaka Swami, they all wear coat and pant when necessary, when they go to Dubai or Pakistan, things like that, because that's what is required. So that's the difference in detail, not principle. And it's okay to do that. Bhaktisar Satya Thakur had a very luxurious car. And it is said that only one of the kings in the whole country had a similar car. Nobody else did. But he said, I'm using it to spread Krishna consciousness, and that's fine. Srila Prabhupada said the same thing. Once he was taken out to somebody's house in a Rolls Royce. And he said, to me, Rolls Royce and Volkswagen Beetle, brand new Rolls Royce or 50-year-old Beetle, same thing. It's taking me to some place. More important is I'm serving my Krishna. And that's what's important. So as long as it's not contradicting any of the devotional principles, including 4 regulative principles, it's okay to adjust the details in order to serve Krishna and keep a life as simple as possible, not create complications. Okay, the second point that's being made in this paragraph is that make a vow according to your capability, but then follow it strictly. And a few weeks ago, we were discussing that if there's a new person, actually, sorry, not in this class, there was another class I gave in Vancouver, and I was saying that, I was addressing the youth, I was saying that if there's a new person and he can only do 1 or 2 rounds, then that's fine. So encourage him to make a commitment to 2 rounds, not insist on 16 rounds, but say, hey, but you got to stick to it. And so that's the other adjustment we can make. Therefore, this paragraph is saying that we should make a commitment, take a vow regarding the devotional service, but it doesn't have to be maximum. It can be whatever we are capable of actually committing to. Okay, let's read the second paragraph on page 63. It says, observing fasting on Ekadashi. Need a volunteer, please?
I can read, Prabhuji.
Please go ahead.
Observing fasting on Ekadashi. In the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, it is said that one who observed fasting on Ekadashi day is freed from all kind of reactions to sinful activities and advance in pious life. The basic principle is not just to fast, but to increase one's faith and love for Govinda or Krishna. The real reason for observing fasting on Ekadashi is to minimize the demands of the body and to engage our time in the service of the Lord by chanting or performing similar services. The best thing to do on fasting day is to remember the pastime of Govinda and to hear his holy name constantly.
Right. So Ekadashi is also known as Harivasa. Hari means Krishna, Vasa means the day. So Ekadashi means the day of Krishna. So the day of Krishna means everything we do should be about Krishna. So there's a very wonderful verse that, bhajan, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written in his book called Sharanagati. He starts with Shuddha Bhakat Charan Renu Bhajan Anukul. In that, the second stanza is Madhavatithi Bhakati Janani Jatane Palana Kori. He says, observing Ekadashi actually is like the mother of bhakti. In other words, it gives rise to, it increases and strengthens our bhakti simply by observing the fast on Ekadashi. Now, having said that, there are different ways of observing Ekadashi. The best and the topmost way is to observe Nirujal Ekadashi, every Ekadashi. If we cannot do that, because if we do Nirujal, then there's no energy left to chant or serve, then we can have fruits one time of the day. And we can't even do that, then we can have fruits and maybe some milk twice a day. Can't even do that, then we can have our normal feast that we do with puri, sabji, fruits, and all sorts of sweets and all that. That's fine. At least as long as we can stay away from the grains, that's fine. But then at least observe the Pandav Nirjala Ekadashi. That's once a year, because that's very, very important Ekadashi. Now, you may be surprised, or you may already know, that not everybody always followed Ekadashi. So, for example, Lord Chaitanya's mother, Sachimata, was not observing Ekadashi until Lord Chaitanya realized and he insisted that she has to do that, and then she started following Ekadashi. Okay. What else? So, the word, that we have all these holy days, right? Janmashtami, appearance of Lord Ram, God Purnima, they're all holy days. And most of the holy days in India, at least, and in the Western world also, were converted to holidays mainly for the purpose of observing some religious rituals. That was the original reason. But when holy day became holiday, it got changed from religious to self-gratification. So now the holiday of Holi is now all about playing colors and fighting and eating sweets and getting drunk, and Diwali has become all about gambling, so on and so forth. So we have pervertized, I don't know if there's a word like that, all these things, but originally they were all supposed to be holy days where you're supposed to observe religious principles and remember the Lord. And the major activity on the Ekadashi day, or any holy day for that matter, should be to chant, to read, to serve, to associate with the devotees. And that reminds me of a funny incident. I spent some time in Mexico City, and Mexico City is like full of potholes. I mean, you think Mumbai and Delhi have potholes? Mexico City is full of potholes. So my taxi driver was saying, "Sir, Mexico City is a holy city." And I said, "Mexico City is holy city?" He said, No, not HOLY holy city. It's HOLEY holy city. It's got full of holes. I just thought it was very funny how he said it. Anyway, let's go to the next paragraph. It talks about offering respect to the banyan trees. Oh, before I go that, any questions or comments? No? Okay, all right. So then let's go to the next paragraph. Offering respect to the banyan trees.
I can read from this.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So offering respect to the banyan trees. In the Skanda Purana, it is directed that devotees should offer water to the Tulsi plant and Almaki trees. We should offer respect to the banyan tree, Ashwatthama, the cows, and the Brahmanas, and should serve the Vaishnavas by offering them respectful obeisances and meditating upon them. All of these processes will help the devotee to diminish the reaction to his past sinful activities.
Right. The point being made is that we should not just offer respect to the banyan trees, but also all those who serve the Lord, whether that's Tulsi, whether it's Brahmanas or the cows. Jiva Goswami wrote a commentary on Nectar of Devotion, and he said that Lord Krishna is pleased when the cows are taken care of very nicely. And he had his commentary actually quotes from another scripture called Gautamiya Tantra, where he describes how to take good care of a cow. So he says, gently scratch the body of a cow, offer a handful of green grass, and circumambulate the cow. So actually, cows very much enjoy if you embrace their neck and stretch your hand down, and you know how the skin on the neck is hanging down? You scratch that part of the neck, they feel very nice. And they actually won't leave you if you do it nicely. And then you can feed them grass and all that. So just a nice way to take care of the cows. Okay, any questions or comments? We move to the next one. All right.
I can read.
Go ahead, please. First paragraph, page 64, giving up the company of non-devotees.
Giving up the company of non-devotees. Lord Chaitanya was once asked by one of his householder devotees what the general behavior of a Vaishnava should be. In this connection, Lord Chaitanya replied that a Vaishnava should always give up the company of non-devotees.
Right. So
Then
just pause for a second, please. So yeah, so I mean, basically in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela, Lord Chaitanya says, Asat Sangha Tyaga, E Vaishnava Achara. Stri Sangha Ek Asadhu, Krishna Bhakta Ar. So it says that a Vaishnava should always avoid the association of non-devotees because they're very much materially attached, especially to women. And it says that Vaishnava should also avoid the company of those who are not devotees of Lord Krishna. So remember, we were talking last week that devotees of demigods and other personalities are not really devotees. So we want to avoid their association. Okay, go ahead, please.
Then he explained that there are two kinds of non-devotees. One class is against the supremacy of Krishna, and another class is too materialistic. In other words, those who are after material enjoyment and those who are against the supremacy of the Lord are called a Vaishnava, and their company should be strictly avoided.
Right. So anybody who thinks a demigod is superior than Krishna, any atheist who does not recognize the authority of Krishna, or any materialistic person like a karmi, they should all be avoided. They are all avaishnava, non-devotees. And just stay away from them because their association is going to bring us down. Okay. In the next paragraph, it explains that it is better to live in a cage or in the midst of a blazing fire than associate with non-devotees, which includes the demigod worshippers. Okay, so I'm just going to skip that paragraph because that's all it's saying. And then the next two paragraphs, I emphasize that even very good devotees of the demigods are still non-devotees. They cannot be they cannot be accepted as devotees. So this point is being made again and again. Only the devotees of Lord Krishna and his other Vishnu Tattva expansions are considered to be devotees. Everybody else is not devotee, and we avoid their association. So can you go to page 65 and read the paragraph that says, not accepting unfit disciples, constructing many temples, or reading many books. Let me know when you get there. I'll skip two paragraphs.
Yeah, should I continue?
No, this is the new paragraph. We'll let somebody else do it.
Okay, sure.
Any volunteers?
Can I read?
Of course, please go ahead.
Not accepting unfit disciples, constructing many temples, or reading many books. Another scripture is that a person may have many disciples, but he should not act in such a way that he will be obliged to any of them for some particular action or some favor. and one should also not be very enthusiastic about constructing new temples, nor should one be enthusiastic about reading various types of books, save and except the one that lead to the advancement of devotional service. Practically, if one very carefully reads Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of the Lord Chaitanya, and this nectar of devotion, that will give him sufficient knowledge to understand the science of Krishna consciousness. One need to take the trouble of reading other books.
Right. Thank you, Prabhu. So some very wonderful points are being made. One is that, a person who's become a spiritual master should be very selective about whom he accepts as disciples. So don't accept unfit disciples. And we'll talk about that point in a very different perspective a little bit later on. But for now, it's being said that do not, a person, a spiritual master, should not accept unfit disciples. Second point being made is that even though you may have many disciples, don't have one because he or she is giving you a lot of money. In other words, you should never become obliged in any form or any way to your disciple. Yeah, go ahead, construct new temples, but only if the money is coming of its own accord. Once again, do not accept somebody's obligation so that you become obliged to them because they give money for constructing the temple. So, I mean, Prabhupada was very, very good about that. He collected millions of dollars, but never once on the condition is somehow or the other he'll be obliged to a person. But when he came up, Prabhupada constructed many, many very costly temples, which is what was required. But he was not doing it for increasing his own fame or reputation. He was doing it for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness. And that's the lesson for all spiritual masters. Don't do it for your own fame and reputation that, look, I have 20,000 disciples, and I have, these rich people for my disciples, so on and so forth. It should be simply for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness. And the next point being made is about reading the books. So he's saying, yeah, read books, but not too many books. And for us, the ISKCON devotees, the very strict instruction is don't read books other than Srila Prabhupada's books or his disciples or the parampara, but not others. Otherwise, you'll get all confused. Prabhupada said more than once that I have given you everything you need in my books. There's no need to go outside. Some people like to quote from this Puran and that Puran, and they have read this book and that book to impress other people. Prabhupada said, in the end, you'll get confused. And any thought of false prestige is totally detrimental to our devotional service. So avoiding the tendency to impress others, developing or feeling false prestige is sure to bring us down. And avoiding it is really integral to any chance of a success in the devotional service. I'm thinking about a story of a person. Digvijay Pandit was one, of course, but I'm thinking about a person by the name of Rupa Narayan, who also called himself Digvijay Pandit, who came to Vrindavan to Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, because he had heard that they are real scholars. So he figured if I debate with them and defeat them and ask them to sign on a piece of paper that I defeated them, then my fame will increase even more. So he went to them and challenged them to a debate. but they were so humble. And also they were so smart. They immediately recognized what this guy is trying to do. So they said, no need to debate. We concede defeat. Give us the piece of paper, we'll sign it. So this person said, well, nothing better than that. Gave them the paper and they signed it. And simply, Rupa Goswami Sanatana Goswami did not want to waste their time arguing or debating with this guy. So they said, it's better that he goes away thinking he defeated us than we wasting our time talking some nonsense with this guy. So this Pandit, Rup Narayan Digvijay Pandit, was very happy. He took the paper and left. As he was walking by the Radhakund, he saw Jiva Goswami sitting there, who was much younger than Rupa Goswami Sanatana Goswami, and he had also heard of him. So he went to him and said, look, your uncles, now they signed this paper because I defeated them. Jiva Goswami knew right away that this guy is a fool, a big fool, and he knew why Rupa Goswami Sanatana Goswami signed the paper, because they did not want to waste their time. So he said, I got to teach this guy a lesson. He's a fool number one. So he agreed to debate. And they spent 7 days and 7 nights debating, and Jiva Goswami completely defeated him, like totally deflated him, crushed him. All his ego was gone. And then he left. As they say in Hindi, means with his tail between his legs, he ran away. Well, eventually, Rupa Goswami Sanatana Goswami heard that Jiva Goswami had spent 7 days debating with this guy, and they became very angry. Rupa Goswami actually said, I don't need to see you. I don't want to see you. Get out of Vrindavan. You don't deserve to be here, and just go. So Jiva Goswami actually had to leave. But, in their hearts, they knew that Jiva Goswami did not do out of ego, but still they want to teach a lesson to the world. So they did that. And then this further story that, how Jiva Goswami was living outside, and Sanatana Goswami finally found him and brought him back to Rupa Goswami. And, they got together again. Anyway, the point of this whole pastime is that Rupa Narayan Digvijay Pandit was studying all these books for prestige only, not for developing devotion and purifying. So our intention from studying these scriptures, these books, should be only to increase our devotion and to increase our purity. That should be the only reason to study, not to be able to quote, verses from the books and try to impress everybody here and there. That is not the purpose. As a matter of fact, that becomes detrimental to our devotional service. Now, it also doesn't mean that we don't read all the books by Srila Prabhupada. We should. For a new person, start with small books and move to the bigger books. But read, because as we read Prabhupada's books, our purification increases, our faith in Krishna increases, our faith in the scriptures increases, and we develop a better understanding of the philosophy, so we can actually preach Krishna consciousness to other people. Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, then let's read the next paragraph. A new volunteer, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Oh, I'm not sure who was going to read.
May I, Prabhuji?
Please go ahead, yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji. In the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 13th chapter, verse 8, Narad Muni, while discussing the Maharaja Yudhishthira, the various functions of the different orders in society, specially mentioned rules for the sannyasis. Those persons who have renounced this material world, one who has accepted the sannyas order of life, is forbidden to accept as a disciple anyone who is not fit. A sannyasi should first of all examine whether a prospective student is sincerely seeking Krishna consciousness. If he is not, he should not be accepted. However, Lord Chaitanya causeless mercy is such that he advised all bona fide spiritual masters to speak about Krishna consciousness everywhere. Therefore, in the line of Lord Chaitanya, even the sannyasis can speak about Krishna consciousness everywhere. And if someone is seriously inclined to become a disciple, these sannyasis always accept him.
Right. So basically, the point being made here is that continuation of the point that a sannyasi or a spiritual master should not accept unfit disciples. But there's one other point being made here. I think it's the 9th offense, do not preach to the faithless. But a lot of us, and certainly a lot of sannyasis and other preachers in ISKCON, they're going everywhere. Prabhupada went everywhere. Vast majority of the people he preached to did not have any faith. So we could say that he was actually making the offense, the 9th offense against the holy name. But he has been explained that no, because it was Lord Chaitanya's desire, and he advised all spiritual masters to preach Krishna consciousness to everyone. Therefore, it's no longer an offense for those who are doing this as a result of or with the intention of satisfying Lord Chaitanya's desire, accepting his causeless mercy and preaching to those people. And then he says, out of those being preached, anyone who's seriously inclined to become a disciple should be accepted, even though he may not be quite fit at that time. And we know Prabhupada made, 10,000 or something like that disciples. Not all of them were fit, but he gave it anyway, saying that you will become fit sooner or later. So he made an exception in that sense. Any questions or comments? Okay, so somebody would like to read the next paragraph? Third paragraph on page 65.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Can I read it?
Of course, Prabhu, please go ahead.
The one point is that without increasing the number of disciples, there is no propagation of the cult of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, sometimes, even at a risk, a sannyasi in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may accept even a person who is not thoroughly fit to become a disciple. Later on, by the mercy of such a bona fide spiritual master, the disciple is gradually elevated. However, if one increases the number of disciples simply for some prestige or false honor, he will surely fall down in the matter of executing Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. So we've been discussing that point. So be careful. And the whole idea is to not increase the number of disciples for your own prestige or false honor. But if you do this and with a desire to spread Krishna consciousness, it's fine. If you do it for prestige, you will fall down, no matter who you are. Okay, let's move to the next page, 66, first paragraph.
May I read, Prabhu?
Sorry? Ashok Krishna, go ahead. Yeah, sure. Sure, go ahead.
Similarly, a bona fide spiritual master has no business reading many books simply to show his proficiency or to get popularity by lecturing in different places. One should avoid all these things. It is also stated that a sannyasi should not be enthusiastic about constructing temples. We can see in the lives of various acharyas in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that they are not very enthusiastic about constructing temples. However, if somebody comes forward to offer some service, the same reluctant acharyas will encourage the building of costly temples by such servitors. For example, Rupa Goswami was offered a favor by Maharaj Man Singh, the commander-in-chief of Emperor Akbar, and Rupa Goswami instructed him to construct a large temple for Govindaji, which cost vast amounts of money.
Right. So actually, I was reading somewhere that Akbar actually gave an entire year of income from his whole kingdom, entire year's income for constructing the temple of Govindji. And then he also gave thousands of acres of land to grow flowers and food, etc., and made it all tax-free, so the temple could be constructed and arrangement for the bhoga of Lord Govindji could be made. Similar story with Sanatana Goswami. He had nothing either. But then by Krishna's arrangement, a businessman by the name of Ram Das Kapoor was traveling to Agra through Vrindavan. His boat got stuck right in front of where the present day Radha Madan Mohanji temple is. And he saw from a distance a lamp, and he thought that somebody must be living there, so he came. And then the whole story goes that by the mercy of Madan Mohanji, his boat was released, and he had promised that if my boat gets released, then whatever money he makes by selling all the stuff in Agra, then he'll give it all for the construction of the temple. So in both cases, the money came on its own, which was the point we made in the beginning. If the money come on its own, no problem. Use it, because that means Krishna's arrangement. He wants a temple. And so, yeah, absolutely, we do that. So we have two very concrete examples. We've all seen the Govindji temple in Vrindavan, and we've all seen Madan Mohan temple in Vrindavan. And they're both constructed in this manner. Okay. Any questions or comments? Somebody would like to read the next paragraph then?
Yes, Prabhu, I can go.
Please go ahead.
So a bona fide spiritual master should not personally take any responsibility for constructing temples. But if someone has money and wants to spend it in the service of Krishna, an acharya like Rupa Goswami may utilize the devotee's money to construct a nice, costly temple for the service of the Lord. Unfortunately, it happens that someone who is not fit to become a spiritual master may approach wealthy person to contribute for temple constructions. If such money is utilized by unqualified spiritual master for living comfortably in costly temples without actually doing any preaching work, this is not acceptable. In other words, a spiritual master needn't be very enthusiastic for constructing temple buildings simply in the name of so-called spiritual advancement. Rather, his first and foremost activity should be to preach. In this connection, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj recommended that a spiritual master print books. If one has money, instead of constructing costly temples, one should spend his money for the publication of authorized books in different languages for propagating the Krishna conscious movement.
Yeah. So again, same point is being repeated again and again, that we construct a temple not for our leisure, not for our pleasure, not for our comfort, but for spreading the holy name of the Lord. If anybody's doing it for their own reasons, then they are not unfit to be spiritual master, and it's not effective to open temples like that. And then we all know the famous story about the meeting between Srila Prabhupada and his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, where he instructed Srila Prabhupada to print books whenever he had money. And so that's the idea being mentioned here, that it is better to spend the money, if you have it, to publish books in different languages than construct temples. Because by publishing books, we can increase our reach far and beyond anything we can imagine by constructing a temple. And we can see it now. Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, all these books have been translated in 75 plus languages. In every corner of the world, including Arabic and Chinese and Japanese, these books have been translated. Of course, Russian languages. If Prabhupada had simply constructed, even 100 temples in America, it would be limited to those 100 cities in America, not the whole world. But publishing of the books, his travel to those places allowed this movement to spread far and beyond anything that otherwise could have been possible. And basically the whole world is now taking benefit of that. Okay, any questions or comments?
Prabhu, I just have a comment. I know one such temple in GTA where they have constructed a temple, and then the organizer or the owner, director, whatever, he has his master bedroom there.
Wow.
Yes, Prabhu. And I have seen it. So I am talking about what I've seen, not only from what I've heard. Yeah.
That's
I
crazy.
just know one temple. I'm sure there must be many more.
There's one too many, yes. Yes, and you're right. There are other temples like that where they use it for their comfort. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's see. Let's read the next paragraph. I think it's the last paragraph on page 66. Straightforwardness in ordinary dealings. Do we have a volunteer?
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Oh, please go ahead, Prabhu. Yes, go ahead.
Straightforwardness in ordinary dealings and equilibrium in loss and gain. There is a statement in the Padma Purana, persons who are engaged in Krishna consciousness should never be distributed by some material gain or loss. Even if there is some material loss, one should not be perturbed, but should always think of Krishna within himself. The purport is that every conditioned soul is always absorbed in thinking of materialistic activity. He has to free himself from such thought and transfer himself completely to Krishna consciousness. As we have already explained, the basic principle of Krishna consciousness is to always think of Krishna. One should not be disturbed in material loss, but rather should concentrate his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord. A devotee should not be...
So that's what I add, that basically it means that one should not consider anything material to be theirs. Everything is belonging to Krishna, and therefore loss and gain is not mine, but Krishna's, who doesn't care about these things. It's very similar to what Lord Krishna told Arjun in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, text 38, where he says, Sukh dukhe savek kritva labha labho jaya jayo. Tato yuddha yujjasa naivam papam avapsasi. He said, just be equipoised, whether you have loss or gain, you win or victory or defeat, be the same. That way you'll not incur any sinful activities, just do your duty. And that's what's being said here. If you remember Krishna all the time, folks, fix your mind upon the lotus feet of Krishna, then all these things will not bother you. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah. A devotee should not be subjected to lamentation or illusion. There is the following statement in the Padma Purana: within the heart of a person who is overpowered by lamentation or anger, there is no possibility of Krishna's being manifested.
Correct. Krishna doesn't like to go where there's a lot of anger in the heart or lamentation or whatever. You know, any of these anarthas, if they're there, Krishna doesn't want to go there. So this is why we keep talking about purifying the heart before Krishna will come. Okay, thank you, Prabhu. Any questions or comments or before we move to the next paragraph, the demigods?
Guruji, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So the Rupanarayan story that you just discussed, right? Along with like Jiva Goswami when they did the Shastra. So the point is, if somebody is arguing with us in terms of what we are following, in terms of chanting and following the rituals, not like all the rules and regulations, so we should not be disturbed by all those things. We should not be countering them. Right? Is that the point, or we should be saying politely, and if the discussion is not going anywhere, just stop it there? So I just want to clarify.
Yeah, sure, of course. That's a very good question. Basically, the point being made is that if somebody is going to argue with you for the sake of argument, if somebody is going to argue with you because they want to blaspheme the scriptures or Krishna or his devotees, if somebody wants to argue because they want to show off their knowledge, but they show no faith, it's best to say, Prabhu, you win, I lose, and walk away. Did I tell the story about the donkey and the tiger getting into an argument last week?
Sorry, I missed if you
said,
but
oh, okay. So if I did that, I won't repeat it. But basically, the point of the story was that don't argue with a fool. They simply waste your time. So faithless or people who are not interested in the answers, they just want to ask questions or they want to just argue, just walk away. Not worth it. We only preach to people who are, Prabhupada says, innocent, means they are willing to accept. They don't have any preconceived notions about not wanting to change their ideas. Then it's fine. Otherwise, what's the use?
Thank you,
Our life is
Because
not
it
about,
happened-
our life is not about winning an
Yeah.
argument. It's about preaching Krishna consciousness. If somebody is not willing to be preached, then move on. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anybody else?
Because
Oh,
it
I have a
happened
question.
Can I read?
just recently with my brother-in-law. He came and then I yes.
Yeah, Prabhu, you're right.
Can
So
I read?
just no, don't argue. Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Can
Prabhu, can I ask a
the
question?
demigods?
Mataji, just 1 second. Somebody asked a question. Yeah, go ahead, Prabhu.
So, Prabhu, you mentioned about offenses, that we should not commit any offenses. But what about those offenses that we tend to commit unknowingly? Like we don't realize that we are committing an offense, but it can be an offense. So in that case, like, how do we deal with that situation?
Prabhupada used to give the example of somebody not realizing the whole stove is hot and touching it. And he was asking, does the fire say, oh, this guy did not know it was hot, so don't let me burn it? Does that happen? So, Prabhu, not knowing the rules, not knowing the law, or doing it unknowingly is not an excuse. Now, it's more easily forgiven if it was done unknowingly, but once. So, for example, I was reading today that Navadvip Dham is known as Audari Dham, where the Lord does not accept offenses. But then explain, he does not accept offenses done unknowingly and once. You keep doing the same one and say, oh, I'm doing it unknowingly, then there's no forgiveness. Okay?
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Sure. Nandapatni Mataji, please go ahead.
Okay. The demigods, one should not neglect to offer due respect to demigods. One may not be a devotee of demigods, but that does not mean that he should be disrespectful to them. For example, a Vaishnava is not a devotee of Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma, but he is duty bound to offer all respects to such highly positioned demigods. According to Vaishnava philosophy, one should offer respect even to an ant. So then what is there to speak of such exalted persons as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma? In the Padma Purana it said, Krishna or Hari is the master of all demigods, and therefore he is always worshipable. But this does not mean that one should not offer respect to the demigods.
Yeah. So, yeah, very important point being made, because in ISKCON especially, and some of our scriptures, including Bhagavad Gita, the worship of the demigods is condemned. But worship should not be confused with respecting. Demigods are more exalted than us and deserve our respect. As a matter of fact, it's quoted by the Purana say, even, sorry, not by the Purana, but it says that even an ant should be respected. So what to speak of the highly positioned demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. So that's the point being made, that they should not be disrespected. They should always be respected. We should be respectful to them. It's just that we don't worship them as Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are not. And that's an offense, to equate them, even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to Lord Krishna. There's nobody equal to or greater than Lord Krishna. You should always remember that. Akala Ishwar Krishna are Sabhratya. Only Krishna is the Supreme Master. Everybody else is servant. We should always remember that. So the question then becomes, okay, so how do you offer respect to the demigods? Do we not offer obeisances? Do we not fold our hands? Do we not bow down? So the answer is yes, we can offer obeisances, but when we offer obeisances to the Lord, we keep him to our left. When we offer obeisances to the demigods, we keep them to the right. So that's one difference. When we offer obeisances to the Lord, we chant his pranami mantra. When we offer obeisances to the demigods, we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So those are the main differences, but we still offer them respect, and we offer them obeisances and all that. It's just a different way of doing it. In our mind, we're still thinking about Krishna. We're still thinking about our Guru, as opposed to one of the limbs of the Sashtang Dandavat, for example, is that in our mind, we are seeing Krishna. Okay? Any questions on that?
Prabhu, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so if I talk about my situation, we have people who do, different things like Sundarkand or, Kirtan, some sort of, and they want, you to be invited. But I mean, like, I know, like, there's a difference between what we do and what they do, because sometimes they are doing things just because they want to show up that they know how to read in Sanskrit, or sometimes they're just doing it because that's the culture we all grew up before. But now I understand, I have a clear understanding, what is the Supreme Personality of God and what is demigod. So how often as a devotee, like, there are times because of the social boundaries, you can say, yes, I'm coming, but you don't want to go so often because it becomes, a ritual that, people are doing this in our society every month, something. You go there because you want them to come and experience Krishna consciousness. But how often can you do that?
Sure. Very good. A very practical question. So first of all, I'll just talk about what I do. I don't know if that's scripturally sound or not, but so at least I'm telling you what I do as opposed to some theory. And so I will go if it is important. So for example, somebody's getting married, if somebody's anniversary, maybe some important birthday, like 40th birthday or something like that, and they're doing Sundarkand. So I'll go. Sundarkand is actually not objectionable at all, because it's basically praying. And we don't distinguish between Lord Ram, Lord Krishna anyway. So that's perfectly all right. The difficulty comes when they want to worship Vaishno Devi or Kali Mata, Durga Mata, then it's a little tricky. And I try to avoid it as much as possible. And if I have to go, then okay, I go. But then look for, is there any deity of Radha and Krishna there on the altar, even if small. Now let's focus on them. And in my mind, I'm simply chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. They can chant whatever they want. I don't pay a lot of attention. I'm physically there, but mentally, I'm just trying to serve Radha Krishna, trying to think of them, chant their name, etc. So that's basically what I end up doing. But I mean, you're right. Sometimes you just cannot avoid. You have to go. Well, fine. If I have to go, then I'll go. But I don't enjoy going it. I try to avoid as much as possible. And now most of my friends know, no use inviting this guy, to these things, so they don't bother anymore. But still, there are some times when they feel it's important enough to invite me, then I'll go. Okay, so I don't know if that answered your question, but that's what I do.
Yeah, sometimes out of the social boundaries, you have to do few things.
Correct.
But at the same time, your heart and mind is not there, but you're there for sure.
Correct.
So I want to know how often, because it becomes hard to say no every time. And then they're like, oh, Pati Nakchadi, she just have one way, and that's her highway. But no, this is not, but it's hard. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, at some point in time, you have to say, I'm sorry, I'm busy, or I can't do this. You don't have to get an argument. This is not my philosophy, and you should not be doing this. They're condemned. Don't get into any of that. It's just try to make an excuse that, look, I'm busy, I got this temple to take care of, that expand it, I'm busy inviting people and arranging functions, blah, 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 all this, excuses that sound valid, give to them, and eventually they will understand. But, every once in a while, it's okay to go, because as you said, you need to maintain the relationships, especially because you hope that one day they'll come to your temple and actually become Krishna Bhakta. So as long as your intention is that, Krishna says, I understand. Don't worry, you can go. Just think of me when you're there. Okay.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? I should, now that Nana was speaking, I should say she's arranging a Rath Yatra in Barrie. So ISKCON Barrie Rath Yatra this Sunday. Sorry?
I said very important. I was about to say this towards the end.
So Nana, why don't you invite everybody to the Rath Yatra?
I would
Just go ahead and invite.
love to extend. Please accept my humble obeisance plus invitation. We are doing our very first Rath Yatra, and actually, I really personally want Vaishnavas and devotees to come, because people in Barrie have zero experience and exposure to devotees. So even if we do something, they have no idea what we're doing. So we need good role models. And I know everybody here is very well, knowledgeable, very well understand the philosophy. So we need everybody's support. If you guys could come, please come. And thank you, Rupa and Prabhu, for accepting our invitation and being and coming there. We cannot express the happiness in words.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure and my privilege. Yeah, at least all of us who are GTA, if we can come. And I can just give you a quick address. It's South Shore Community Center in Barrie. You Google it. It's very easy to find. So South Shore Community Center.
So Barrie's Lakeshore, South Shore Community Center. It's on the trail. It's beautiful. Very nice place. If anybody wants to make a picnic out of it, there will be, food, of course. It's Rath Yatra. So just come and come for a nice drive. Barrie is not that far.
Yeah, I would highly encourage everyone to do that, if you can.
What are the timings?
It's, okay. So Nana, you go ahead. You answer the question.
Mataji, it's from 10 a.m. till 12 p.m. Prabhuji, can I send you the flyer and then we can send it to everybody?
Yes, I can do that. Sure, send it to me. I'll send it. And just an inside information, if you are half an hour late, it's okay. So don't worry too much. So that's the special concession for people on this call. Okay. All right. So I'll do that. Please send me the poster and I'll send it to all these people. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Let's keep going. All right. So next paragraph, anybody wants to read? Please go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Not giving pain to any living entity. This is the statement of Mahabharata. A person who does not disturb or cause painful action in mind of any living entity, who treats everyone just like a loving father does his children, as the loving father does his children, whose heart is so pure, certainly very soon becomes favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In so-called civilized society, there is somewhat agitation against cruelty to animals, but at the same time, regular slaughterhouses are always maintained. A Vaishnava is not like that. A Vaishnava can never support animal slaughter in or even give pain to any living entity.
Right. Thank you. So basically, the point is that anyone who avoids giving pain to any living entity becomes favored by the Lord. So we should remember that we treat everyone as a living entity, which is the soul, without consideration of the body, and be kind, avoid giving pain, and that's an easy way to become dear to the Lord. So that's it. That's the end of chapter 7. I'm going to see if there are any questions or comments you have. We still have about 20 minutes. So if there are no questions or comments, I'll introduce chapter 8. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you want to share any comments or realizations, let's do that also. Okay, so no questions or comments. All right, so let me move to next chapter then, which is chapter 8. And the title is Offenses to be Avoided. So remember I said in the 7th chapter that the first 18 of the 64 limbs of devotional service are going to be covered in chapter 7. So chapter 8 actually talks about only one of them, that's 19th, the next one, which is the offenses to be avoided. That's the title of the first paragraph of this chapter. And basically, it talks about the various offenses in chanting the holy name and worshiping the deity that must be carefully avoided. And so essentially there are two types of offenses. One is against the holy name, that's known as Nam Aparad, and the other is against the worshiping of the deity. It's called Seva Aparad. So we have two aparads means offenses, Seva Aparad and Nam Aparad. Okay. One point that will be made very soon in this chapter that I want to point out is that actually there is a verse, sorry, there's a bhajan by Narottam Das Thakur glorifying the Vaishnavas. Oh, Vaishnav Thakur, Dayar Sagar. There it says, Hari Sthane Aparad, Tare Hari Nam, which says that if you commit an offense against the Lord, then chanting of the holy name will get rid of that aparad. But that should not be misinterpreted to say that it's okay, I can commit offenses against the worship of the deity, and then I'll chant the holy name and get rid of it. That doesn't work. So holy name will not deliver you if you deliberately make offenses against the worshiping of the deity. And we discuss all those offenses that are there. But the point that I want to emphasize, and re-emphasize in the chapter, is that while the chanting of the holy name does deliver one from all the offenses, but if somebody willfully, knowingly employs the name to get rid of the offenses, then it doesn't work. Okay, hopefully that point was clear. In other words, don't take undue advantage of this facility of chanting of the holy name, getting rid of your offenses, because if you do it knowingly on the strength of chanting, it doesn't work. Actually, it's a whole different offense. Namna Balad, I can't remember now. Basically means do not make an offense on the strength of chanting the holy name and getting rid of it. Okay. The second thing is, while we talk about this, always remember one thing. The most essential function of all the devotional items is to always remember Krishna. And what's the second line? Anybody?
Never forget Krishna.
And never forget Krishna. So always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. That's the bottom line always. However, to make progress, we have to be very careful about avoiding these offenses. Another point I want to make is that as we go through these lists, and there's about 74 of those offenses listed, 10 against the holy names, 64 against the deity worship. You might find, and we'll point them out as when we run to them, that some appear to be contradicting each other. But we'll analyze those and we'll prove that really there's no contradiction. So just be aware of that. Okay. And that's about all I want to say. That what's more important than following the regulative principles, that to remember the rule which says always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. All these rules, regulations, knowledge of offenses. There's only one purpose. The purpose is to make us good devotee, well, pure devotee. If we simply follow, and this point we have discussed before, if we simply follow the rules and the regulations, whether this pravritti or nivritti, which means to do the do's and the don'ts, it doesn't matter if we don't worship Hari, the Lord. There's a very famous verse that says, Aradhito yadi Hari, kim tapa, which says, if we are worshipping the Lord, there's no need for any austerities. Second line says, na aradhito yadi Hari, kim tapa, which says, but if you are not worshipping the Lord, what's the use of any austerity? In other words, if you're doing austerities without putting Krishna in the center, without Krishna in the mind, then austerity is useless. And we know so many examples. People do all sorts of austerities, like staying underwater, neck deep in cold winter, or entering a fire in the middle of June or July. It's so hot. I mean, those are useless austerities because Krishna is not there. Then it goes on to say, Antah bahi yadi Hari, kim tapa, which says, if in our heart we got Krishna, then what's the use of any austerities? And then opposites along the same lines, it says, na antah bahi yadi Hari, kim tapa. And if Krishna is not there, what's the use of austerities? In other words, if Krishna is there, what's the use of austerities? If Krishna is not there, what's the use of austerities? The main thing being, therefore, Krishna needs to be in the heart, and that's the main thing. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Follow the regulations. But if for whatever reason we cannot follow regulations, do the bhakti anyway. And I've given this example before from my personal life. My wife took first initiation in 1987, and I did not take it until 1992. 5 years I waited. The reason was I was traveling for my job, reasons of my job, I should say. And in those days, it was almost impossible to find food without onion and garlic. So 5 years I avoided. And finally, my Guru Maharaj actually said, it doesn't matter, take it and leave it to Krishna. So in 92, I got initiated, and magically, food started becoming available without onion and garlic. So the point is, if for whatever reason you cannot follow regulations, don't stop doing bhakti. Doing bhakti is more important than the regulations. Okay. So another example I can think of, and forgive me if it's not appropriate, is when women have their period, the rule is don't worship Krishna. But if there's no alternative, there's nobody else in the house, it's better to do it than not do it because, that time of the month. Okay. So don't deliberately avoid rules and regulations. But if they have to be avoided in order to do service, then that's fine. Okay. That's about the only point I wanted to make. Go ahead.
During those times, you cannot directly touch the deities, but you can do other services, like you can cook prasad, you can make garlands, right? Or even those are prohibited.
So strictly speaking, they're all prohibited. But the point is, if there's no alternative, it's better to do it anyway because you want to serve Krishna, rather than say, oh, Krishna has to, stay there half asleep for 3 days, 5 days, whatever it is. So the point being, what's more important is to serve Krishna than the rules. Rules are there, but they're not there to avoid serving Krishna. They're there to properly serve. But if the situation is that's either or, then serve Krishna. Okay, I hope it's not confusing.
Yeah, that's true.
प्रभु जी,
हाँ जी प्रभु जी, माता जी बोलिए.
ये आपने जो आज हैंड आउट भेजा है,
आज हमें कोई हैंडआउट भेजा नहीं, लास्ट वीक भेजा था.
लिखा था हैंड आउट.
Link. Okay, I don't remember sending a handout. I remember sending link to the recordings. Are you seeing this week's letter or email or last week's email? What's the date on the email?
ये वहाँ लिखा था yesterday.
No, but what's the date on the
Yesterday.
email?
ये डेट नहीं मैंने देखी. लिखा था आज की क्लास के लिए.
क्या लिखा था?
आज की क्लास का लिखा था मेंशन और साथ में प्रिंट आउट है, हैंड आउट है, तो उसमें काफी सारे पेजेस से निकले. सो आई वाज वंडरिंग कि ये कैसे.
So Mataji, what's the question then? What is the question?
ये chapter 7, chapter 5, chapter 4, 3, lots of.
Yeah, so what about it?
When are you use them?
So Mataji, we use them, all those things that you're talking about, we have already used them. So I'm just putting one document with all the documents. So you don't get a new one every week because it's very hard to keep. So I keep adding to the existing document. So everything that you have in your hand, we have already covered. I just don't delete it. I keep adding to it.
Okay.
Okay. So like, for example, I think the first document you will see in this is summary of chapter 6.
7, 5, 4.
Yeah. So we have already done all that. So when I send you a new document, it will have all that plus any new material. So I'll just put the new material on the top so you don't have to shuffle the pages. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Prabhu, I have one more question. When first time I read about the offenses, the 10 aparadh, my first impression about it is who wrote them? Like, is it just us Vaishnavas writing them? Where are they? Like, how are they compiled? Solid 10? Like, where are they mentioned?
So chapter 8 lists them all. So that's one example. Nectar of Devotion mentions them all. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport to the verse Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pad Sevanam by Prahlad Maharaj, in that he also mentions all these offenses. But the source is the same. Okay. So we see it in Nectar of Devotion and Srimad Bhagavatam. But I think they are also listed in Padma Purana. And that may be the original source. But frankly, I have read it only in Nectar of Devotion and in Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes, because they say, okay, if these are made, where are they written? Like my husband was one day asking me, you've been brainwashed, you just read these books and whatever these books say, you think they're right. Where are they written? Tell me. And I was thinking, he's like, sometimes it makes sense.
So,
do not associate with non-devotees, but when you live with non-devotees, you have to associate.
But it's a reasonable question. I mean, this is why the whole reason for chapter 7, for example. What's the reason for chapter 7 that we just finished reading? What does it contain? It contains evidence from scriptures to everything that was said in chapter 6. So that's the only reason is that people will ask, where's the evidence? Did you just make it up? Right? So as a matter of fact, I'll give you again another personal example. When I started giving classes back in 96 or something like that, actually I was home in Lucknow and I was talking to my brothers and my mother, and I was quoting some verses. So my brother later told me, my younger brother later told me that after I finished talking, he went to his room, opened Bhagavad Gita and checked to see if I was making up those verses or they were actually there. Right? And these days, I've seen many, many times as I'm giving the class, people will say, so where's that from? And I'll say, okay, here, here, here. They'll Google it right away. So they basically want to know if there's evidence, and it's perfectly all right. Why should I be allowed to make things up? Where's the proof? Show me the money. You probably heard that dialogue. So where's the proof? And so he's right. So show him the proof. Give him the proof. Here are the 2 books. That's where it's written. And if he's further interested, ask him to go find Padma Puran and read it. But I think his question is valid. I mean, perfectly valid. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Then we will see you next week, Thursday. Hopefully Sunday. And otherwise next week, Thursday. And thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyo evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhuji.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhuji.
sir.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Prabhuji. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Usha. Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Anand Kumar Prabhu, welcome back. Glad to see you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you.
Yeah, I got your email. I think I got today or so today. I was very happy that you're coming back. Yeah, that's great. And you said that you were seeing the recordings and all that.
Yes.
Great. Really appreciate it.